Today is the November Accessibility Meetup, and I'm delighted to say we've got Maria Young from Agile Collective, who's also the accessibility lead for LocalGov Drupal, been involved since the beginning. And you're going to talk about one of your many passions, accessibility, obviously, but cognitive accessibility specifically today. And I think there's a little bit of interaction during the session, and we've got space for questions and discussion at the end. Maria, it's over to you. Have fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so we'll have a couple of moments where you can, we'll have a bit of interaction. It'll be sort of more typey in the chat interaction rather than like breakout groups. So if you want to, don't freak out that we're going to suddenly put you on the spot and make you talk if you happen to be multitasking at the same time. Yes, so this is a reworking of a talk that I did earlier in the year, I guess, in a Drupal camp, England. So for some of you, it would be familiar, but that's never a bad thing. Hopefully, it's slightly less frantic than it was that time. So I will just share my screen and check. Someone give me a nod if you can
You
see
are.
it.
Yeah, your
Great.
screen's it's all good. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. Now, but I can't see my speaker notes, can I? Where have they gone? Okay, so we're going to be talking about cognitive accessibility. I'll talk a little bit about what that means in a minute, but I'm Maria Young. I'm a Drupal developer and accessibility lead at Agile Collective. I have some accessibility certification. Come talk to me about that if you're interested in finding more about that. And there are how you find me on things, maria.y and MSA Young on GitHub for the time being. Yeah, I am, when I can't think of something to put on a slide, I'm going to give you pictures of my cats because they're cute. We're going to be talking about cognitive, we'll do a little bit about cognitive functions and cognitive disabilities. I'm going to introduce you to the cognitive accessibility guidelines that have been developed by the Cognitive Accessibility Working Group, and then we'll look at some of the key principles for enhancing cognitive accessibility. And as I say, we'll have some chance to a bit of interaction, ask questions as you go. I can't follow the chat as I talk because there's too much going on in my brain when I'm giving a talk. So. So just briefly, accessibility, you'll have seen this sort of slide before when we're talking about accessibility. There's various aspects of accessibility that we look at, that we focus in on. So we often talk about vision, hearing, speech, motor and cognitive functions specifically. So making sure that people can aren't don't experience barriers if they have vision impairments, for example, or speech impairments. So in this case, we're focusing right in on cognitive accessibility, and that's to do with stuff that's going on in your brain or in your mind. Yeah, so yeah, cognitive, the word cognitive, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of mental actions, process of acquiring knowledge, understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. So there are a lot of things going on in our brain, in our minds at at all the time, really. It's not just one thing that is happening in our brain. There's a lot of cognitive functions, and I find it quite useful to kind of pick them apart. I'm sure it's not signed exactly like this, but they include things like attention and focus, language and literacy, learning, thought, perception, memory, and executive function, actually being able to decide how to do things. Here's a picture of a brain, very, very scientific, I'm sure. It's yeah, a picture of a brain divided up into 6 quadrants with attention, learning, language, thought, perception, and memory. I think they do sort of happen in different parts of the brain, but I don't think it works like that. So yeah, each of us are like, we're all stronger in some of these functions than others. And I think like I'm sure we've all noticed that sometimes we're stronger, we're better, our memory's better than other times. Certainly my memory has not got better over time. And that's a very well-known thing as we age, particularly memory can get our ability to memorize things is impaired. So a cognitive impairment or disability, you can sort of describe it as one or more of these functions being impaired to the fact that it severely impacts your life. However, oh yes, that's what I've just said. They can be long-term, short-term. They can be permanent. They can be recurrent, so it can be happening sometimes, but not all the time. And they can come about through, it can be, it just might be the way that we're born. It might come on over time due to, age, but also illnesses or trauma, physical or mental health conditions can all kind of trigger changes in our cognitive functions. There are diagnoses that you can talk about that are in this realm. I don't think it's very helpful to focus right in on them to just just talk about those, but it's a very, very large spectrum. Dyslexia is usually to do with language and words, being able to process language in word form. Dyscalculia is more to do with numbers, being able to understand or deal with numbers. Aphasia is a condition which sometimes, often, but not always goes along, is a symptom of a stroke, or can be, and that's to do with being able to tie together words and meaning. So that can be with speech or it can be with the written word. It's very interesting. And then you've got things like ADHD, ADD, which are to do with attention, being able to not hold attention very easily or over hyper focus. So all of these things, big, large, massive spectrum that we're covering. Yeah, so that bit, we'll move on. Okay, so how does this actually affect people? We all develop strategies to overcome, to work with our strengths and sort of cover over where we might be weaker. But it can have a really huge impact. I'll just throw out some examples just to illustrate it so we can move on. So folk who might have trouble keeping or regaining focus can struggle to complete a task if there are loads of distractions or interruptions going on. So, for example, if you're filling out a form and you have to go and get something, you go and get your passport, then something happens on the way and we forget to come back to it. So you might need help to remember what you're doing, reminders to bring you back to that, signposting if you get distracted. Clear instructions using clear language can really help. I mean, it really helps everybody, but more so for people with language-related disabilities. Some people find it really helpful to have supporting graphics and familiar symbols. For other people, that can be more distracting. So it's an interesting area. Yeah, and often people need a bit more time to process a task, particularly complicated or important tasks. But yeah, okay, let's move on. There'll be more. Okay, and this is just going to affect everybody, all of us at some point. Our cognitive functions are severely impacted when we are when we're tired, when we're suffering grief and bereavement. If you're in acute pain, that's been shown to very much impact a lot of our working brain functions. When we're in loud and distracting environments, if we're dealing with new situations or very stressful situations. I'm sure we can all identify with that. Suddenly we have to doing something new, got to work out how to deal with it. It can all become very overwhelming very fast. if we're working in a language which isn't our first language. That's adds additional overheads to what we're dealing with, and also, as I've mentioned, aging. So what can we do about this? So as web developers or content creators, what's actually in our capacity? How can we help? So there is a group within the W3C called the Cognitive Accessibility Working Group, and they have developed a number of guidelines. There's a screenshot of one of them here. Don't try and read it. There's far too many words on the page. But they've developed quite a lot of documentation, which is a good starting point into looking into what we can do. This might look quite similar to a document I'm sure everybody's read from start to finish, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is a set of testable guidelines to make the web content more accessible. They're fine, but there isn't very much in the way of dealing with cognitive accessibility exactly because of a number of things. It's quite a new area to test, to work with, but a lot of things. So all of the guidelines in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, they have to be testable in terms of like true or false. Is this there or is it not? And a lot of things with cognitive accessibility are a little bit more gray area than that. So for example, writing in a clear and simple way, you can't really say yes or no, that is. There's a lot more that's what's regarded as best practice, still very important. Okay, so that is why there's not a huge amount in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines so far. However, what we have is now a roadmap and gap analysis, which has been produced, which is summarizing the issues that people are finding and proposing ways that we can make those better. And some of these things will make it into future versions of the WCAG guidelines. I think I said a lot of words there. I'm not sure if I made a lot of sense. Hopefully we'll get on. But yeah, there are a couple of resources here, which you can find. The links are there. We'll share this later. Maybe someone could pull the links into the chat. But there's this gap analysis, and then there's this set of guidelines called Making Content Usable. And we're going to be looking more into that in the next bit of the talk. I recommend them. Okay. Take a breath. Yeah, so some of the key principles for enhancing cognitive accessibility. So these come from the Making Content Usable guidelines that the Cognitive Accessibility team have produced, and they've expanded each of these guidelines with in the docs that we're sharing. There's user research, user stories, and good and bad design patterns for each of these guide principles. I think there are 8. Some of the things are just like what you might think of as really obvious, just really good basic UX and content design, and some of it contains like quite like suggestions for new web specifications that haven't been developed yet. So it's quite exciting. Yeah, so right. Okay, so the key principles are helping users understand what things are and how to use them, help users find what they need, use clear and understandable content, help users avoid mistakes and know how to correct them, help users focus, ensure that processes don't rely on memory, provide help and support adaptation and personalization. I'm not going to go through all of these in this talk because previous experiences showed me it's a bit too much. So we're just going to focus in on a couple, but I really do recommend going in and looking into some of the others. They do build on each other. And yeah, they're interesting, very interesting. Okay, so we're going to start with something else. I'm going to talk briefly about cognitive load theory because I think it helps. It might not. It might be more confusing, in which case you can forget it. But there is this theory developed by someone called John Sweller in the 80s about, our working memory, basically how that actually works. At any given point, when we're dealing with a task, there's these three things going on. There's intrinsic cognitive load, extraneous, and germane cognitive load. So intrinsic is actually like the complexity of the task at hand. So if there's new information coming in, like how complicated this, like processing the new information that's in front of me. So that's one thing that's going on. There's extraneous cognitive load. So like what else is going on? What else is going on in my brain? Maybe I'm already distracted or there's loads of stuff going on around me. That's also taking a lot of my brain capacity at the moment. And then germane cognitive load is how we're linking anything that's new to stuff that we already have banked in our brain. So that sort of relating new things to things that we've already learned. So what we want to do as web developers, content creators, we want to be simplifying the task at hand, reducing the amount of new information, and stripping it back to what's really necessary. We want to be reducing anything that's extraneous. So take out anything that we don't need, get rid of anything that's distracting. And we want to be maximizing the germane. So we want to be using familiar patterns that people already know. And that just reduces the likelihood that people are going to suffer cognitive overload. I'm sure we know what that's like. Far too much going on. Suddenly have to deal with something brand new. Can't make head nor tails of it, and we just have to walk away because it's just too much right now. Okay, so helping users understand what things are and how to use them. This was principle one. So imagine we're searching for a piece of information. We on our council website and probably Google it. We land on a website. The first thing that we do is, we're trying to make sense of where we've landed. We have to work out how the site works, the design patterns that they're using, how we're going to navigate it, what's going on. It's a lot easier if there are familiar design patterns, so if things are like where you expect to find them. And we don't have to learn a brand new system in order to get the information that we need. So we want to use predictable patterns. So yeah, using clear layout. Let's put things where they're meant to be. Let's make it clear where the header is, where the main content starts, what is main content and what's supporting content. And let's use semantic markup because this is important for people who aren't visual as well, to be able to make sense of actually what's on the page. So use familiar patterns, put things in expected places, use semantic markup. If you really want to innovate and play with breaking common design patterns, just don't do it when you're providing like critical or urgent information. Like save that for something that's not that important. Make it obvious what things are and how to use them. There's a screenshot here of a door handle with a sign next to it that says push. If that doesn't work, pull. If that doesn't work, we must be closed. And there's a quote there next to it saying, when a device as simple as a door has to come with an instruction manual, then it is a failure, poorly designed. That's from Don Norman from NN News, the UX people. So, I mean, this is pointing to like, make it obvious how things work. We unconsciously, like we're always looking for signs how a thing works. And on the web, that might be, if something if you get a visual change when you move your mouse over something, you get a hover effect. That's an indication that it's interactive. Underlines on links are an indication that you can click them. Buttons, checkboxes, fields, they all the way they look give us information about how they are going to be used. So we want to use this sort of familiar library of patterns to make it more obvious to people what things are doing, so that we don't have to guess at that kind of stuff. In my notes, I have a long rant about links and buttons, which I'm not going to go into right now. Links are links and buttons are buttons. Use the right one. We'll skip over the rest. Yeah, icons. So here's a set of icons some of you might be familiar with. I'm very used to having to try and describe how to share a screen to people using these set of buttons, because it's really not obvious which icon is which. So do use icons. Some people find it really helpful to have icons supporting visible text labels, because a lot of people find icons more recognizable than words. But don't just use icons. And don't assume that people will understand what that icon means, because that's not actually how we work. There isn't a universal set of meanings to a lot of these icons. Okay, I'm going to pause now and ask whether, going back to the principle, which you may have forgotten what it was help users understand what things are and how to use them, whether anybody's got any other ideas other than these, how we might do this in our working life, thinking about your how you are involved with your website or your work. How can we help users understand what things are and how to use them? Just type in the chat or talk or unmute if you prefer. Yeah, using common and basic terminology, that's really important. Instructions, very good.
I have a quick question. So
Yep.
icons, there's a debate that's gone on over many years. And people, like you said, do use them. They're very helpful, but only once you know what they mean. So how do you do that? How do you use icons and explain what they mean? Yeah, how do you cross that hurdle of training people up on icons?
Well, I mean, some really big players out there will just release a whole set of icons and expect people to learn it because they know that they have to. But more often than that, we generally suggest providing visible labels with your icons. And then both are there, and then it might be quicker for you to find it once you've learnt the icon. It might be quicker to find the icon once you've learnt it, but don't be consistent across the site, I think. Good questions. How do you know when instructions are helpful or if they're compensating for something that is poorly designed? It's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, the best things don't need instructions. Is it a magnifying glass or a frying pan? Very good. Yeah, these are true. Yeah, using hyperlink colors that people are used to. Yeah, blue, exactly. Relying on familiar patterns.
I would like to say, touch on a bit you mentioned about memory, making sure people don't have to go, what on earth's the thing that's on 2 pages back that now refers to this page? So if there's a relatable information, it needs to either be mentioned again or why is it separated on 2 separate pages anyway, if you're tabbing through something. So yeah, I mean, memory is just, especially when you've got all the things happening in life, but keeping words clear, consistent, and
yeah,
I talk from personal experience. I'm neurodivergent, so I've got lots of memory issues. So having this kind of very clearly laid out and consistent simple instructions. Even if it looks obvious, simple instructions help, because assumptions are terrible. We all assume the wrong thing. So I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got I probably won't touch on it for very long, but the not relying on memory is one of the principles that's really important. Okay, I'll move on, but yeah, these are all really, really good. I feel like this one sort of plays into, a lot of things we've learned about using simple language and structures, using headings and that kind of thing is really helpful in laying out your content, etc. Okay, I'll skip on again. Where are we going next? Okay, I'm skipping to number 4. Help users avoid mistakes and know how to correct them. Okay, so yeah, an example. This is quite important when it comes to filling out forms, particularly forms that have consequences, like tax returns or paying a parking fine or that kind of thing. If filling out forms, getting the right words in the right fields in the right format, all of this takes quite a lot of brain function, and from kind of both form design perspective, if you're able to actually decide what questions you're asking, but also in the way that we gather the inputs that we're using, we can really help people in stopping them from making mistakes and helping them get over the hurdles. Making sure. Well, I'm going to ask you for ideas about how we do this in a minute, but yeah, how can we help people avoid making mistakes? And what do we know already from our best practice? Yes, using required fields, making it really clear which fields are required and which ones aren't. I'm a big fan of validation that happens on submit rather than when you come out of the field. When you sometimes get form validation that happens when you leave the field. But that can be quite tricky for people who are using screen readers, for example, because you get a lot of feedback if you're just trying to scan through the form. Using the correct validation. Yeah, that's really important. Useful error messages, providing examples, and yeah, actually like putting work into writing the copy for your error text is, don't just say this form is required. Actually what context, what's wrong with what I added or didn't add. Verification, double entry for email addresses. Sometimes it's okay, so asking people to put in double ins so that they don't get it wrong. Okay, so you're validating if it's important that you have their email address, they've got to prove that it's right. Using hover tooltips or pre-written example in input needed, so giving people examples of the format that you need the text in, that can be really helpful. Yes, using consistent accessible design on everything. That's really important. Very good. Tell the user what we want before we ask and what format you need it in. So if it's a long and complicated form, particularly, if they're going to need to go and find their passport or go and find something, tell them before they start what they're going to need, what sort of information. Because if you get halfway through and discover that you've got to go and get something, the likelihood of getting distracted or losing your train of thought, having a timeout, all of these things goes up. Show password options. When you're putting in a password, you can actually see what the password is. That's actually really important.
when they have like the little I symbol.
Yeah.
Because I find Yeah, and then you get in the wrong password and
Yeah.
you can't see what you've got wrong. I hate it. I was
Exactly.
just typing as well. I hate it when they ask for like third, fourth, and 12th character or whatever, and you've got a really long, complicated password, and you're having to count it out on your fingers. I'm rubbish at that.
I'll come to some password stuff in a bit, but absolutely, it's really tricky. Yeah, and someone, Sanjeev's pointed to the GDS design systems, which, as always, have some great great advice. Sorry, I'm just validate with how people may write, not what your system. Yes, yeah. So, Adam, do you want to say your point rather than me? Are you able to unmute and say what you just typed? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, didn't find the unmute quickly there. Yeah,
That's
like
okay.
that. I think that one and national insurance is another example on I believe, on the GDS components page, if I remember correctly. But yeah, just a common one we come across when, particularly with off-the-shelf systems where it's this one-size-fits-all model and they insist on, say, title is a big one, and then you have to say, this is not what you should do, or things like this, where it's like, oh, but the payload of an integration requires it as one string. So you have to say, that's fine, so take it out and do that validation somewhere else, but don't push that on the user, because it's obviously the savvy ones who read an error message easily will find it easy to correct, but then there's some who feel they've got it wrong. And actually they haven't, because obviously some things you can get wrong, but something like that, I think it's we've probably all got examples, whether it's with our own bank or something else, where you're just like, that's such a strict rule. I've written my address in a very normal way, or my it could be anything. I've even seen issues with some, obviously old systems in many councils where things like a double-barreled surname aren't liked, and an off-the-shelf product, because it's using a sort of off-the-shelf integration, says no hyphen allowed. So you're sort of telling someone that their legal name isn't acceptable, which is obviously quite strange. So yeah, just things like that.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, postcodes as well. There's some that are really easy to validate somewhere else, right? You have to have the space in a postcode or not. Dates as well as is another one. Yeah. Okay. I think these are all really, really great examples. I think someone mentioned that there was, so there's Matt, you mentioned there's a new WCAG rule, which says you can't ask users to re-input passwords. I think I might be wrong. I think that's not quite right. But we don't want to make people fill in the same information twice if we've already got it. So if you've got a multi-step form, in the first step you filled in your name and your address, then don't make them do it again on step 4 if you've already got it. That I think it's relating to that, but it might be that I've misread that. But that is another way that we can help people get through a process. So yeah, so I think you'll have covered everything that I've got in here. Oh yeah, autofill. It's really great. Allow for autofill. You have to. It's one for the developers really, but you have to code it right to get to make sure that you're asking for the right information. But once people have got it right in their browsers and things, it's more likely to not make mistakes than typing it again every time. Allowing for multiple input formats, I think that's the point that Adam's making, like let people write in the way that they write and then fix it somewhere else in the system. And also letting people review submissions before it kind of becomes final. So often you get a page at the end where you can actually review everything that you've input and go back and change it if you need to. How are we doing for time? 22. Okay. So here's, ensure processes don't rely on memory. So this touches a lot on security and privacy, and it's quite an interesting space. But basically forcing people to rely on memorizing stuff is, well, it's very it disadvantages those who have bad memories, or you know, and for some people that's like long-term memory. I really struggle with reading a number off my phone and getting it to my computer to fill in a two-factor authentication. I just can't do that. Or I can, but I struggle with it. So yeah, try not to rely on memory. But you know, we do have a responsibility to make sure that security and privacy are respected, and we do need to put these intentional barriers in place in order to ensure security and privacy. Accessibility and security people do need to work together to try and ensure that both of these needs are met, right? That people can access things they want to do. They're not excluded from content or services because the security barrier is too high. But also, it's really important that we you know, that we're protecting people's privacy and security, because folk with cognitive disabilities are they're a significantly increased risk of being victims of fraud and such like. It's yeah, it's a terrible situation, but so it's really important that we as an industry like really work towards making sure that things are secure and private, and that they are accessible, that they go in hand. So, you know, some of the problems come with, and you've mentioned some of them already, like very restrictive password policies. You know, you need capital letter and a star and some numbers, and, you know, these things. They don't always help. And actually, quite often, there's a bit of research to show that actually people start using, you know, the same password more often, or not strong passwords, because they can't you know, because you can't remember so many, you know, there's too many hurdles to jump through. So we all start making shortcuts to get around these, and actually they end up being less secure. So rethinking, we need to consider, obviously we need some restrictions, but think about it sensibly. Not disabling copy and paste into password fields. A lot of people manage things like password manager used in order to be able to have secure passwords, and needing to be copy and paste into those so you don't have to remember the password from one thing to the other. And yeah, captures, you know, I'm sure you're aware of all the problems that captures have. There are some ones that are better than others. Has anyone got anything to say on all of that bit before I move on? Any thoughts or ideas, or I think it's quite an interesting space.
Passwords for me is always a bit that catches me out, and I don't necessarily think of myself as someone who has like massive cognitive need. I'm dyspraxic, and I think that's why I find it really hard to sort of visualize what I'm writing when I can't see it, and complicated passwords, and when you can't see them, and then you just get more and more frustrated, and you're in a bad mood by the time you get through.
And I totally agree.
Ruins my experience.
I totally agree on the copy and paste, because the number of times I've tried to copy password with my password manager, because it won't autofill, and then it won't allow you to paste it into the field, and it's just drives you crazy.
Yeah, I think, Graham, you made the point earlier, but this we're seeing it much more often in applications being able to see your password when you're typing it, and then mask it when it's submitted is really helpful. Obviously, there are privacy concerns with it, but I think, well, I certainly find it a very useful feature. I like the ones that, if you come across the ones where you can only see it while you're pressing on the button, and so the moment you take your button off,
That's
it
right,
disappears
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
It's really
There's a little
very
icon
unhelpful.
of an eye, and you click on it, and it shows your password.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The fingerprint, the way you can do it on your phone with the fingerprint now as well for a lot of them, I will always enable that, and I just find that much easier. I don't know if that's like good or bad from a security point of view, if it's better or worse, but for me it's so much easier. So if I'm given that option, I will always choose that, so I don't have to remember a password.
Yeah.
And I don't know, then am I like opening myself up for, and then my wife thinks I'll get mugged and my phone will get taken off me and I'll be forced at knife point to log into my bank account, but I don't know how true that is.
I don't know how true that is either. But yes, it's in terms of not relying on memory, things like biometrics are obviously very helpful in that circumstance. You know, a lot of two-factor authentication, this is not my area of expertise, but as far as I understand, it relies on something that you have and something that you remember, or you know, two different functions. So maybe you've got your phone and you remember your password, or you've got your biometrics and something else, you know.
Passkeys is an interesting one.
Passkeys,
Mm.
yeah, pins, passphrases. There's a lot of options out there, and I think you know, there's work going into it. Mark's posted a link to the world's hardest captcha. Not to say, if I'm ever in the pub with you, ask me about when I had to buy a visa on the border of can't remember which country it was, Uzbekistan maybe, and I had to try and beat a Russian captcha in order to buy a visa. So let's go on. Right, so this finally, I'll stop after this, but supporting adaptation and personalization. I'm gonna drop this one in because it's really, I think it's where some of the newer developments in web development are coming. So but yeah, I mean, the more simple forms of this is making sure that we don't block people's browser extensions and APIs and things like that people use. You know, there's a lot of browser extensions out there that can help people, you know, provide easy read versions of web pages and all sorts of things. You know, you can override the CSS to use a font that you like. Let's say that if some people find particular fonts much easier to read, or line text and all of these things. So it's important to make sure that we're allowing for those things. We can't test for all of those things because there's an infinite number, but we don't block them on purpose. There's also a lot of more and more preferences that people can set in their browsers and on their operating systems, such as preferring reduced motion, preferring a color scheme, forcing colors, like Windows have like high contrast modes, and also, like one of my favorites, preferring reduced data. So making sure that we're supporting all of those and actually you know, respecting them. So that's to do with personalization. There's some slightly more interesting ones. So here's a screenshot of something that that exists currently, where you can, for people who have kind of severe language disabilities, sometimes they find it much harder to read symbols. So there are sets of languages, sets of symbols that are basically versions of words that you can then get your browser to recognize the word and insert the symbol alongside it. So the top screenshot here is a kind of standard set. And then the second screenshot there is ones that people have, you can load your own symbols to help you recognize words. More common usage is like, you know, recognizing you might have a symbol, it will insert an icon which is asking for your first name or asking for your last name, you know, repeat things that you're often asked for. But this is some personalization that's out there at the moment. And something that's I understand is maybe on its way is this new bit of web spec, which is going to allow us to mark bits of content as critical, as more or less important on the page, and then we might be able to, as users, like ask for a simple version of the page, and we'll only see the most crucial content on the page, which I think will be really helpful to be able to like really concentrate on what's on the page. As long as web developers we use it respectfully, we'll be able to allow people, yeah, sort of maybe like reading mode, which we get you can sometimes use at the moment, which kind of strips away the other stuff on the page. And I think that is the end of what I prepared, apart from one more picture of my cats. So we can have questions or conversation or whatever you like.
Thanks, Maria. That was fab. Thank you very much. I think we're open for questions for sure. So if you know how to use the hand up function, you can use the hand up function. It's under React. And there's a way of raising your hand, just so I can see if there's a few people. If you don't know how to do that, feel free to unmute and just start talking. Or if you would not like to do that, you can just type into the chat. Let's see. There's some cat love from Imogen, Maria, and Kate.
Help users focus. That's that was one of those things. Providing cat pictures is not going to help people focus, I don't think.
Yeah. We got any questions for Maria? I had one, Maria, but it's a practical thing, which is the slide deck. Is that open to view at the moment for people? I wonder if we could drop it into the chat. I will share it afterwards as well. But
it probably isn't right now, but there's I don't think there's any
fine.
reason that it can't be.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it after. That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason was I was trying to find the link. I guess I had one question, Maria, which is when you're. So I was just this morning I was building out a form, quite a simple form to send out to the suppliers, and I sent it out. And as you were talking through that, the form stuff, I was like, oh God, have I properly considered like a lot of that? I guess this type of stuff that we're doing maybe is, well, it's all relevant, but when you're providing a service and people need access to a service or to do something to get a blue badge or whatever it is, those sorts of considerations become a lot more important, and they need to be front and center rather than an afterthought.
That doesn't sound like that was
not a question. It was a
reflection.
reflection.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Sorry, I was just checking. I didn't miss the question.
No.
I'm getting distracted by people getting distracted by my cats now.
Okay, good. This is the chat function in Zoom is a good example of something that comes up in terms of. So we talked a lot about website design, but when we're using things like this, there's the other thing that was cropping up. Is it something that I've been pondering is like how to make these sessions as accessible as possible, and the chat function in Zoom is something that comes up a lot. For some people, it's really helpful, and for others, it's really distracting. You said at the beginning you struggle, especially when you're speaking, to follow the chat, obviously, because you need to focus on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But your focus was a lot more on websites, but I wonder about those sorts of interactions as well.
Well, it is, and this I'm not sure if it was I brought it out in the talk, but it is a really interesting area in terms of cognitive accessibility because it's so broad. Like something that will help one person is like completely the worst thing for somebody else. For example, you know, having images and videos and things to explain content can be really helpful for people who don't really process words that well. But for somebody else, it can just be a massive distraction. So there aren't, you know, in a lot of cases, there just aren't one size fits all. There's some very good sort of general rules, but kind of need to provide ways of switching the distracting stuff off, and make sure that the crucial content isn't only that, like, crucial content is offered in lots of different ways, I think.
So number 8, principle 8 becomes really crucial.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a lot of work being done.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got any questions for Maria?
Other than to say, Maria, that was really eye-opening. I mean, a lot of this stuff can be quite obvious sometimes, but we don't really articulate it and bring it across. So really appreciated you going through that and just making us think about this stuff.
You're very welcome.